Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about the moon and all of its phases, the energy that it brings, and how you can utilize that to manifest the things that you want to manifest. So I've been doing this basically for the last year. I wanted to get some experience with it before I spoke to it. So I'm going to teach you the very basics of everything, just how to identify what phase of the moon we're in, how you can use that energy during that time in your life, how to know how it affects you personally. I'm going to cover just the very basics. And I do want to say that a lot of this information comes from the Moonology book. So what I have learned from Yasmin Boland. I think this is a fantastic book. And it's not just like a one-time read. It's got the basics of everything in the front, but then in the back it has like, oh, full moon in Aquarius, full moon in yada yada. So then when that moon is specifically coming up, you can go to it in the book and just remind yourself of the specifics of it. And we will get into that later into this video, but I just wanted to mention, I think this is a fantastic book. So fantastic that I ended up getting the diary that goes along with it, and we'll cover that as well in this video. So welcome if you are new here. My name is Lauren and I am a psychic development coach, and I like to teach people how to use their psychic abilities here on my channel. And a lot of that we cover like tools, how to manifest. It touches a lot of areas of our lives. And astrology is one that I've been very interested in lately. If you want to see more astrology content, let me know in the comments down below. But I think using the moon phases and just starting here is actually a good starting point to basically get into astrology. So if you're wanting to learn, great place to start is the moon. So first, let's jump into just the basics of the phases. Now, you might have learned a little bit of this in like elementary school. I don't know about you guys, but I had to do like a moon book where I drew the moon at different phases at night. And I just remember being so confused. I was like, why is the moon changing? Isn't it always like the same thing? And basically the moon cycle is 30 days. It takes 30 days to go around Earth in a complete circle. And during that 30 days, it is basically hitting all 12 signs of the zodiac. And because it's moving around the Earth, the way the sun hits it basically makes it look different. Like we've got this poster here. Like sometimes the moon will be full, sometimes it'll be completely gone, sometimes it'll be kind of like a half moon or a crescent moon. And so that's basically the sun's influence. It's where it is in relation to us and where it is in relation to the sun. That's about all you need to know about that. So this cycle starts with a new moon, and a new moon is when it's like completely gone. Now it's not actually gone, right? It's just that the sun is on the other side of it in relation to us to where we can't see it at all. So that is our new moon, and it's basically dark, very dark. We can't see the moon. And then it takes about 2 weeks, and that's when we get to the full moon where we can see it completely. And then again, it's about another 2 weeks until it goes back to the new moon, starting another cycle. And again, throughout this month, it goes through each 12 signs of the zodiac, and it spends about 2-ish days in each of those signs. Now let's get into the phases of the moon. Technically, there can be a lot of phases. It's basically just how much of that moon is visible, where it's at in the sky. You know, again, is it this full moon? Is it like a crescent? Is it half? And there's names for all of these moons. But basically, we're just going to stick to the 4 quarters, which we've got the new moon, and then we have like a half moon or a quarter moon, and then we have a full moon, and then we're back to like another half moon, and then we go around and around. So the new moons, the energy of the new moon, it's all about like fresh new ideas. There's a little bit of like anticipation. It can be maybe a little bit like daunting because the energy is like, oh, I can't see the moon. And so when we think about this energy in our lives, it's very much like, ooh, anticipation, fresh starts. We're at the beginning of another cycle. Basically, you've got a lot of new ideas. It's also a time for like being quiet, being restful, just kind of observing. And you're kind of just deciding what's the groundwork that I want to lay for this next cycle. So it's a kind of like an introspective, quiet time. And so the next phase is those quarter moons. It's when it looks like the moon is halfway full. in the sky. And really all that you need to know is that in between these, you're going in between a full moon and a new moon, or a new moon and a full moon. And then when the full moon comes around, we've got a lot more amplified energy. Everyone usually describes it as a bit more chaotic, a bit more emotional. Full moons are just a little bit more intense. I think that's subjective to what's going on at the time. But very much that opposite of that quiet, introspective energy of a new moon. It can be like a little tense, a little chaotic. You can be like having fights with other people. And it's a very like outward, you're dealing with other people, you're dealing with the world and how it is affecting you. So during this time, you might feel a little bit more wound up, a little bit more anxious, and that's pretty typical of the full moon. Now there's a bunch of other phases of moons in between all of this, and they each have their own energy and meaning. However, I think this is just the basics of what you need to know to start out with, and then you can build on that knowledge. So there's like a balsamic moon, there's a disseminating moon, and again, all of that is covered in that moonology book. Now let's get into my next favorite like tip, and that is, how the heck do you know what phase we're in? Just by looking at the moon. Like, it's very easy if you have like an app, which you can download and it'll tell you just where you're at. However, I think it's a cool thing to be able to just look up in the sky and be like, oh, I know exactly where we are. And so this is a trick that I've learned from my coach, and we're gonna use this behind me to kind of illustrate it. This is an easy trick that all you need are your hands. So basically, let's go ahead and start with your right hand. And with this right hand, again, remembering that every new cycle starts at a new moon. So we're starting from like a black, non-existent moon. And then we want to use our right hand. Always remember, you're starting with your right. And if the moon can fit where it's like filling in the right part of your hand, then we know that the moon is getting bigger. We know that the moon is leading into a full moon. And so if it can fit in your right hand, then you are basically looking at a waxing moon. And anything in this right hand up to a full moon is waxing. And then you get to a full moon. And this is where the moon is full. And if it can fit like this on both sides, probably a full moon. I feel like you guys know what that looks like. And then we want to drop our right hand and move to our left hand. And this is when the moon can kind of fit in the crux of your left hand. Sorry if my camera's not focusing, and so if the moon fits into your left hand, this is the second phase where the moon is waning. So we're going from a waxing moon to a full moon to a waning moon, and then we're back at a new moon. So if we are in a waxing phase, you know that you are building up to a full moon, we're building up to that energy. Whereas if we are in a waning phase, we're moving past the full moon, we're winding back down, we're releasing so that we can hit a new cycle. Okay, so now you know what the phases are, how to figure it out just by looking at the moon. So let's get into like, how do we actually manifest using these phases? Now again, remember with manifestation, that it's all about how you feel about it. If you believe it's not gonna work, if you don't believe the moon has any sort of like helpful energy, it's probably not gonna work for you. It's all about your intention and your belief. Personally, I actually really just feel connected to the moon and I enjoy working with it. I do feel like it has its own energy. And I feel like over the past year, I have manifested quite a bit by following the phases of the moon, so much to where I believe that it is like, you know, influencing us in a lot of ways. However, if that's too much of a stretch for you, what I would encourage you to think about is just using it like a manifestation calendar. You know, every time you see that new moon or full moon, you just kind of get in this headspace of like, oh yeah, what are my goals? And use it kind of like as accountability. You know, every time you see the moon, you're reminding yourself of the goals that you want to set. So maybe it's not the moon itself helping you, but maybe it's just that you're checking in more often. You're thinking about your goals more often. You're thinking about what you need to release in order to get those goals. And I think if you use it in that sense of the word, I think it could still manifest some pretty big things in your life. And it might just be because of you. That's kind of like my personal opinion with like manifestation, is that it's all about your intention. You could use a journal, you could use the moon, you can use whatever you want. But you have to feel like it's going to work. So if you don't feel like it's going to work, I don't think you're going to see the results that you would want to see. So at the start of a phase, we have the new moon. And so again, that's that new fresh energy. So this is all about setting intentions of what you want. Think about new things you want to come into your life. So usually that's a time where you're asking your guides, the universe, God, whatever you believe in, for help manifesting whatever it is. Maybe you want to get healthier. Maybe you want to bring in some new friends. Maybe you want to have a new car, whatever it is. That's the energy of inviting something in. So at a new moon, you're always going to be thinking about, what do I want to attract in to my life? What's new that I would like? Essentially, think of the new moon as you are planting seeds for the dreams that you want. Now, I'm briefly just going to mention kind of some of these in-between moon phases if you want to take notes. So we have the waxing crescent moon next, and that's basically like, okay, we're moving forward on our goals. We had that goal set, we had the intention, and now we're just going to kind of keep moving forward on it. And then we have that first quarter moon coming up, and that's basically when the moon looks like it's like half full. And this is when we start to see hiccups maybe in our plan. I don't want to say that's like a for sure thing. I feel like I had some moons where it didn't seem like it was that hard. But this is when you're trying to hit those goals. You're working with the moon to manifest that car, that relationship, whatever it is. And you might start to see things kind of come up that are just obstacles or hindrances. And so really this moon is about like testing your resolve and saying, okay, how committed are you? So you might have to double down a little bit and kind of keep putting in that energy and say, yes, I'm serious, I do want this. And then the next moon phase is the gibbous moon. This is kind of just, again, continuing that energy of like, keep moving forward if you can. And then we get to the full moon. And remember, the energy of the full moon is a little bit more chaotic. I feel like at this time, this is when you start to see if your manifestation is working or not. And usually this is a time for release. So we want to get rid of something, anything that is not helping us to manifest that thing that we want. So say, for example, we want to manifest a new relationship and we've been working at it. And around the full moon, we might realize, oh, wow, I keep a lot of people around me that are very like narcissistic or something like that, just making it up. And so you realize, wow, if I need to get into a new relationship, I kind of need to set better boundaries with people. So you might have to like release a friend around this time just so that you can clear out that energy to help manifest that new relationship. So pay attention during the full moon. What is not helping you? What do you need to let go of? And so usually around full moons, instead of focusing on like manifesting rituals, you're focusing on like releasing. You want to focus on meditations where you're getting rid of things that don't serve you. It's a bit of the opposite when we talk about the new moon. Another keyword for the full moon is forgiveness. A lot of times you need to forgive yourself, forgive other people. Sitting in that energy will also help you identify what needs to be let go of. Ultimately, follow the resistance. Follow where those emotions are taking you to recognize what's no longer serving you around the time of a full moon. Then the next phase we have is a disseminating moon. Basically, at this stage, you're just relaxing. You're kind of regrouping and you're saying, okay, I'm recovering after that full moon. I'm getting my bearings again. And then the next phase is that third quarter moon. And this is basically, again, like another half moon. We're like halfway between a full moon and back to a new moon cycle. And this is just reevaluation, readjusting. We might be looking at our original intention and realizing we might need to tweak it. We might need to change it completely. It's basically a turning point a little bit of like, ooh, is this working or is it not? Do I need to make new plans or do I need to kind of keep moving with the old plan? An old plan not meaning like a bad thing. It's just, have I been doing the work and putting it in? Do any adjustments need to be made? And then we have the balsamic moon, which comes right before the next new moon. And this is just about letting it go, releasing, surrendering, saying, all right, my hands are in the air. I'm just going to move forward into the next thing. So this is just about, again, letting go, which you can kind of see the pattern. New moon, we're like pushing and pushing and pushing, that first half of it. And then the second half is more of that releasing, letting go, surrendering, adjusting kind of energy. And then we are right back at a new cycle with a new moon. And this is a time to daydream, lay out new plans, lay out new seeds for what's coming up next. So that is the cycle as a whole and like where you should kind of be putting your manifesting intentions along that cycle. Now, I would say the biggest thing I personally believe is like if you really need to release something and the moon is not matching up with that, just go ahead and do it. Like, you know your gut, you know your intuition, you know what you need to do. Just because it doesn't align with the moon doesn't mean you can't like do something. I think that's like a huge part of a lot of this is like if you get too analytical with it, I think you're gonna just like, I think you're just gonna get too in your head, and that's not what we want to do here. We want to feel with the emotions. That's what the moon is all about. However, when we talk about the moon, there's a lot of, you probably see it everywhere. There's people that are saying, oh, the moon is in Aquarius, the moon is in Pisces. And you're just like, what does that mean? And then some people will talk about like houses and the moon is in this house for you. And that's basically kind of just taking it to the next level and understanding how that specific moon and that specific phase is affecting you at a certain time. Now, personally, I feel like a lot of times it just didn't make sense to me. Like maybe I just don't understand enough yet, but I do feel like some of the moons, they were supposed to be about like my house life or my home life or my money. And I just didn't see that. And I didn't feel like that was like prominent at that point in my life. So, you know, just go with, again, your gut. However, there were some moons where I was like, holy crap, that is exactly what's going on in my life. This is so specific to a T. It is just crazy. So I want to just give you a little bit information if you want to take that a little bit deeper, if maybe you already know the basics of the cycles and the phases. So let's learn about how you can use the zodiac sign that the moon is in, as well as your own rising sign and basically the houses, so that you can understand even more how that moon might be affecting you. So if you remember at the beginning of this video, I said that the moon goes through all 12 signs, right? And they sit about 2.5 days in each of those signs. So depending on when that full moon or that new moon comes around, it's going to be sitting in a different sign. And that basically means it's bringing a focus to that type of energy. So if the moon is in Aries versus the moon is in Pisces, a lot different energy is going to be going on there. So like an Aries full moon might be super intense. It might be super like I'm thinking like the ram, which is the Aries like symbol, and you might have like lots of fights with other people or something. Whereas a Pisces full moon might be very dreamy. You might be in your head in the clouds. You might be daydreaming so much, so intensely that you're just not grounded at all. So that's kind of like how you can see a difference there for like everybody, depending on where the moon is. And again, you have to apply that, okay, well, I know what sign it is, but also is it a new moon or is it a full moon? Now, after about a year of going through all of these like full moons and using the Moonology book as well as the Moonology diary, I think I'm pretty okay at like understanding the energy based on the zodiac signs. But I still, when I started, I could not memorize it. I sometimes don't even have like a familiarity with one of the signs. Like right now when I'm filming this, it's Aquarius season. I don't know a whole lot about Aquarius. So that's why I think it's great to have this book, because I can look up full moon in Aquarius, new moon in Aquarius, and really understand what the energy might be like that's coming up. And again, to take it just even to that next step, one of the things that you can do is basically look up your rising sign. So this is not your sun sign. This is not like I was born in February, I'm a Pisces. This is something that you have to put into a calculator to figure out. So I am a Pisces sun, a Scorpio moon, and a Virgo rising. So that means when I read horoscopes, I technically need to be going off of my rising sign. I need to be reading the advice for Virgos. And so then I know, okay, what area of my life is this affecting? So the houses are more just the like, what are we talking about? Are we talking about career? Are we talking about family? Are we talking about money? And basically the houses are kind of where the moon is currently sitting in your personal chart. So if you can look that up in this book, which I would highly recommend, it has a chart and it explains exactly which house each moon is affecting. I'm sorry, it does say it in this book, but I think this one's a little bit better because it actually, this is the diary for 2023. And it actually says at the top of each moon what house it's going to be in for what rising sign. So quick example here, the next moon that we've got coming up is actually a super new moon in Pisces. And this is happening on February 20th. And if I look in this book, it does all of the work for me, but you can look this up online too if you need to. And it basically says right here, Virgo, it's going to hit those Virgo risings on the 7th house. And then I can go, I've got it all book-eared, I can go to the 7th house in the front of this book and basically understand what that is. And the 7th house is about lovers, spouses, exes, enemies, business partners, blah, blah, blah. So that new moon that's coming up for me, okay, it's a new moon in Pisces, so it might be more dreamlike, there might be more of a spiritual sense to that moon because that's what a Pisces is about. But then because I'm a Virgo, that might be affecting my relationships. It seems like my personal relationships, maybe with like my husband or something. So I might have to realize and set new intentions around maybe what I want to do in my life and the goals that I have with like my husband. Now again, if you have other goals, I don't think you have to completely like stick to this. But if you want to really like amplify exactly where the moon is sitting in your personal chart, that's an easy way to look it up. Basically, understand the sign that the moon is in and then follow that up with your rising sign to figure out which of your houses the moon is affecting. And just a quick note on my personal experiences here. This is the 2023 diary. I bought the 2022 diary and used it all of last year. And I kind of talked about it in my Patreon video about New Year's and setting intentions and kind of how you can manifest and set goals. And I will link that, my Patreon, if you want to check that out. But I truly believe that I manifested one of the best years last year because of this. And I don't know if it was the diary. I don't know if it was the moon itself. Again, maybe it was just that I was being more accountable. Maybe it's purely because I was just every 2 weeks looking at my goals, looking at what I needed to do, and then reminding myself how far I'd actually come. Maybe that's what did it. But I truly think that I talked about it in that video, but in 2022, I went from just not a good place to an amazing place that I never thought I would be in. And so personally, I truly believe that this works. Again, whether or not you think it's the moon or you think it's just you doing the work of like goal setting, I think that's, your own personal beliefs, but I highly recommend getting this. I highly recommend getting the Moonology book if you want. Yasmin Boland is fantastic too because she also has an astrology book that teaches the very basic beginners like astrology. Like I read that and I can now read like a birth chart and understand it, which is really cool. And she also has cards that go along with it. She's just got everything. And I think I have both of them, yeah. So this was her first deck, the Moonology Oracle cards. And then here's the second one, which is more about manifesting, Moonology manifestation. So if you're serious about learning all of this and you're really interested in it, it might be fun to use these to read with, because I think these also help teach you about those moon phases and those astrology phases. So I hope this video was a helpful just introduction to get you started on working with the moon this year. You'll have to let me know if you want more of this type of like astrology type of stuff. I'm again a newbie to it, but I can definitely cover the basics at this point. So thank you all so much for watching, and if you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!